Welcome to Chapter 1, which takes a look at childhood and delinquency. And this video is just going to provide an overview of the chapter. You'll still need to make sure that you read the chapter and watch the PowerPoint, but I at least want to provide some highlights of the chapter. So really this chapter begins with an overview of the different dilemmas, situations that are faced by youth today in the United States. Some of those include stress, growing up in substandard housing, living in extreme poverty, and other things. So imagine what it would be like growing up under those different conditions and circumstances, and what impact or influence that might have on whether or not youth becomes delinquent or deviant. Then we'll also look at the importance of studying juvenile delinquency. Did you know that more than 2 million youth are now arrested each year for crimes ranging in seriousness from loitering to murder? Did you also know there's more than 20,000 gangs in the United States? Also, much of the crime committed by juvenile delinquents today is actually committed by youths that are involved in multiple serious criminal acts. Now, one good thing that the chapter discusses is the aging out process, which basically has to do with the fact that most youth offenders are going to age out or discontinue crime when they become adults. Now, one of the questions that begs discussion from this chapter is this. Do you believe that society and the juvenile justice system can develop effective programs to control delinquency? Now, we'll talk about that in later chapters, but just kind of think about that. And you know, when you think about that, what would be some of the ideas that you might have for different types of programs and what those programs might look like? Now, prior to the 20th century, there was really little distinction made between adult and juvenile offenders. In fact, both adults and children were often eligible for the same forms of punishment, which could include prison, corporal punishment, and even the death penalty. Now, a group called the Child Savers came in, and they really formed to assist children that were in need, and they created all sorts of community programs that helped serve these children, and they lobbied for a different or separate legal status for children. Now, thanks to their efforts, there was a new juvenile justice system that emerged that operated under what we call the parens patriae philosophy, which is still common today. And basically what parens patriae means is that the state is supposed to act in the best interest of the child. Therefore, children aren't punished for their misdeeds, but rather they're given the care and custody necessary to remedy and control their behavior. In other words, it's more rehabilitative than punitive. Most states define what is a minor child usually by an age. There's a statutory legal limit. Most often that is either 17 or 18 years of age. Now, even though youths do share a lesser degree of legal responsibility than adults, they are still subject to arrest, trial, and incarceration just like adults. Now, some juvenile offenders can actually be waived or transferred to adult court. Now, those are usually reserved for the more serious and experienced juvenile offenders, and each state kind of varies on what they allow, what age, and what crimes they allow to be transferred. Now, another offense that's kind of unique to the juvenile system is what we call status offenses. These really are actions that wouldn't be considered illegal if an adult did them. Some examples would be truancy, curfew, underage drinking. So another question I pose to you is, do you believe that status offense laws should be eliminated, or do they serve a purpose in helping control juvenile delinquency? Now, the last part of the chapter focuses on increasing social control over juveniles and their parents. And we mentioned curfew a while ago. So do you think that curfew laws are actually effective in helping control vandalism, graffiti, nighttime burglary, auto theft, and other crimes? Now, there is some research that suggests that it does, while others show that youth curfews may actually increase delinquent activity. So think about that for a minute. What could explain this increase with curfew laws? Now, there's also discussion of parent liability laws, which basically state that parents can be sanctioned in juvenile court for behaviors that are associated with their child's misbehavior. Do you think that's all right? I mean, how do you feel about the fact that all states except New Hampshire actually have parental liability laws? Do you support the idea of parents being held civilly liable for the damage that's caused by their child? In extreme cases, do you think that parents should be criminally liable for the illegal acts of their children? Another example or something to think about would be like school attendance truancy policies that the school you went to or the school that's in your community that it currently has. Do you think that a child not attending school is the fault of the parent? Well, all of those different questions that I asked, as well as many others, are very important things that we have to consider when we take a look at juvenile delinquency. And we'll answer more and more questions as we start to look at, why do youth become involved in crime? What are some explanations for that? And then what does that mean as far as certain programs and policies that are in place to help control, reduce, and even prevent juvenile crime?